So coming up is a woman that is considered such an icon in the trade community, that her friends may sometimes think that TRIPS is a hot new internet travel startup that she's getting ready to work on. But actually, this ambassador is a dynamic woman who is a champion on trade and a former recipient of WITA's Distinguished Service Award. Please welcome Ambassador Susan Schwab.
Thank you, and good evening, and thank you again for inviting me to the prom. Senator Wyden, you commented that policy matters. I would note that in addition to policy mattering, hearing you and Chairman Hatch, Chairman Ryan, and noting your accomplishments this year, I would also echo others in congratulating you and noting that leadership matters too. So thank you all and congratulations. So I have the great privilege this evening of presenting the Lifetime Achievement Award to Ambassador Michael Moore from New Zealand. And some of you may have noticed that Ambassador Moore is not here this evening. He is recuperating from a stroke that dared to get in his way earlier this spring. But he is recuperating here in Washington. You will hear from him a little bit later, and you will be able to see that for yourself. Michael, hi. So glad you're doing well. Look forward to having you back with us. Mike is very ably represented here this evening with colleagues from the New Zealand Embassy, including Ambassador Carl Worker, who you will hear from later, his charge d'affaires. And I know that Mike would be particularly disappointed not to be able to attend this event this evening because of all of the evenings not to be here to work this really hot room of members of Congress and staff and administration officials on behalf of New Zealand, trade policy, and of course, the greater good. Now, in preparing my remarks, I did not dwell on all of Ambassador Moore's many accomplishments. Ambassador, Director General of the WTO, Minister, Prime Minister of New Zealand. It's all in the program. You can read it for yourself. I did, however, touch base with a number of his friends, former colleagues, former negotiating counterparts, and I'm going to share a couple of those comments with you this evening. I started near the beginning of his career and was reminded by Phil Goff. Some of you may recall Phil, former New Zealand Trade Minister, still a member of the New Zealand Parliament. Phil reminds us that Mike Moore was indeed a child prodigy, entering the New Zealand Parliament at the age of 21. And yes, he lost his seat subsequently, but he came roaring back in 1978 and quickly got under the skin of Prime Minister Muldoon, stating that he was mad as hell, which he immediately suggested could either be taken as a description or as a medical diagnosis. Now, Phil Goff reminds us that Ambassador Moore has always taken great pains to distinguish between the awesome responsibility that the United States has as the world's preeminent economic and military power, and New Zealand's role as a small but fiercely independent nation. And as he is fond of saying, New Zealand will do anything that you ask us to do, but nothing that you tell us to do. Closer to home, I asked Charlene Barshevsky for a funny story about Mike Moore. Weren't the two of you together in Seattle in 1999, I asked. To which she responded, yes, we were in Seattle together, but there was not much funny happening at the time. Okay. Charlene went on to say, Mike is one of the dearest people that I know, but he does have his faults. Between the accent, the fact that he mumbles, his penchant for talking in low conspiratorial terms, I'm never entirely sure what I've agreed to. But I've always had the greatest confidence that it was all to the good, and I've never been disappointed. Mike Moore does seem to have a way with the ladies. Must be the twinkle in his eye. Maybe it's the can-do attitude, or maybe it's the salty language. So I asked Carla Hills for something funny. She insisted on noting that many of the things that we accomplished in the Uruguay round could not have been accomplished without Mike's determined backing. He is one of my great trade heroes, she wrote. So I asked Dorothy Dwoskin. Dorothy reminded me that Ambassador Moore's theme for his campaign to be Director General of the WTO was, "No good deed goes unpunished." That was more like it. And I suspect Roberto Azevedo would be in agreement with that today. Happily, his staff did provide, and former staff did provide a few stories, but those are all not for attribution. And unfortunately, most of them require a New Zealand or Australian accent in the telling, and no matter how much I've had to drink, there is no way that I could do justice to them. They do speak very fondly and very highly of him as a boss, as a leader, speaking of leadership. He's the dude who, when you bring him to options, to pick one, he suggests that you should aspire to accomplish both of them, and then facilitates the accomplishment of both. And then there's his wicked sense of humor. And so I will close with one of those stories, which relates to him working the Hill. So as a former parliamentarian, former prime minister, he loves to work the Hill, and I suspect the members who were here, I noticed Chairman Ryan nodding appreciatively. So he loves going up to the Hill and working the Hill. So when Ambassador Moore first got here, he went to call on members of Congress. And he has this sort of friendly rivalry with Kim Beazley, the Australian ambassador. And one of his early calls, one of Mike's early calls on the Hill, was to Steny Hoyer. And there were folks milling around outside Steny's office, waiting to go in, and the door opens, and Mr. Hoyer's last meeting exits, and instead of waiting to be shown in, Ambassador Moore goes right in the door closes, meeting starts, except nobody's bothered telling Steny Hoyer who his next meeting is. And Steny, apparently being the great diplomat and politician he is, tries to figure it out from the accent. Steny starts talking about the recent visit of the Australian Prime Minister to the United States, at which point poor Mike had to acknowledge that he was in fact the New Zealand ambassador. They had a nice meeting, I'm told. Mike left, but on his way back to the embassy, he got on the phone, called Ambassador Beazley and said, "Kim, mate, let me tell you, you need to get up to the Hill. Nobody knows who you are." Well, we all definitely know who Mike Moore is in this room, and we are proud to honor him this evening. We are particularly proud to honor him, you, with this WITA Lifetime Achievement Award. Mike Moore. Please cue the video. so we can hear from Ambassador Moore.
Thank you, WITA, for the honour. I understand I'm the first non-American to be so honoured. I'm not with you tonight because I've had a stroke. 2 more strokes and I'm out. Anyhow, I'm a true believer. I especially commend my fellow honorees, Chairman Hatch, Ranking Member Wyden, and Chairman Ryan. You've shown enormous leadership and courage in getting TPA through. At the last dinner, my great friend Clayton WITA spoke. Never give up on trade negotiations, he said. Well, New Zealand started this negotiation and we're in no mood to give up. We've heard a lot of talk about the writing of the rules for the region. As it stands, we're in danger of allowing the protectionists to write the market access rules. This would set back agricultural liberalisation for years. I hope in the final negotiations I'll be proved wrong. Thank you and good night.
Ambassador Carl Worker, please join me and Ted Austell in accepting the award for Ambassador Moore.
Thank you very much for your very, very lovely words about Mike Moore, Ambassador Schwab. Can I simply say what an honour it is to accept this wonderful, wonderful recognition for Ambassador Mike Moore. In New Zealand, we are so proud of what Mike Moore has done through a long lifetime to promote international trade liberalisation. And can I just say, on behalf of Mike Moore and on behalf of all of us in New Zealand, thank you, WITA, and thank you so much. This means a lot. Thank you.